1997, Silicon Valley visionaries come together to educate policymakers about the unprecedented opportunities in American technology. For almost 3 decades, in Washington and in state capitals across the nation, TechNet has been tech's most powerful advocacy group. From startups to the world's most iconic companies, TechNet represents almost 5 million employees and billions of customers worldwide. Across the country, our members are helping expand access to education, improving transportation, increasing agricultural productivity, empowering small businesses, strengthening our national security, and helping scientists detect diseases and discover new treatments. At TechNet, we advocate for legislation that will improve lives, grow our economy, and keep us safe. And that work has never been more important, because America's adversaries are determined to surpass us in critical technologies like AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing, energy, and advanced manufacturing. But TechNet is leading the fight to keep the U.S. the global leader in innovation and ensure a more prosperous and sustainable future for every American.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Linda Moore, and I'm the CEO of TechNet. I want to just thank the Washington Post for their partnership on this event. Thank you for those who are watching us live via stream, and for those of you who are in the audience. We're going to talk a little bit about the industry perspective on a lot of the questions that we just heard from Representative Guthrie answering from the congressional perspective. And here with me today, I'm so excited to have Aparna Bawa. She's the COO of Zoom. And Aparna joined Zoom in 2018, and then a little thing called the pandemic made Zoom an overnight sensation. And then Kent Walker has been the president of global affairs of Google. You've been with Google for about 20 years now, I think, Kent. But a lot of things, one thing that people don't know about Kent is in his early days, he was assistant U.S. attorney for DOJ in DC and also in San Francisco. So thank you both for being with us. We have other TechNet member company executives in town. We're going to meet with administration officials and congressional leaders tomorrow about a lot of the issues we're going to discuss today. I'm going to pose the first question to you, Kent. So we heard Representative Guthrie talk about the need to beat China and other adversaries. We've led in the tech race for decades now, and we tend to think that that's going to happen forever. So what do you think is the most concern when you think about America leading the world, and what should we be most worried about if we fall behind?
You know, it is the key question of our time in technology. It's important to go back and remember that in what was called the long century between the late 1700s and the early 1900s, Britain led the world geopolitically because it led the world technologically in technologies like coal and steam. In the 20th century, America led the world, largely because we led in mass production material science. And the open question is, who leads the world in the 21st century? And there's some concerning trends out there. ASPE, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, does a study every few years about technological leadership. Roughly in 2000, America led the world in 60 of 64 different key technologies, everything from batteries to chemistry. Today, China leads the world in 57 of those 64 technologies. So that's the challenge in front of us. But we do think that AI and quantum and other new technologies that are just starting to come to the fore are really the key to turning that around. The AI is not just a scientific breakthrough, it's a breakthrough in how we make breakthroughs. And it really has the opportunity to keep America with a lasting technological edge. Now, there are obviously things we need to do to get there, and we can talk more about that. But the stakes are extraordinarily high. China has more than 200,000 new AI companies. President Xi has made it a strategic imperative to have widespread AI deployment. They have the AI Plus program, where they are investing in new technologies. And I'm sure we'll come back and talk about DeepSeek, because as Chairman Guthrie did a moment ago, there's an awful lot of competition at the moment right now, and we really have to keep pace.
Thanks, Kent. And Aparna, I have a question for you that's a follow-up to that. You know, lots of times it's the small and medium-sized companies that really drive innovation and take it to the next level. How can we create an environment that allows those kind of small and medium-sized companies to scale, especially on AI?
It's such a good question. Obviously, even when I look at the news, I turned on the TV this morning, I hear about, my good friend Kent's company over here. I hear about the top 7, the big 7 in tech. And I just want to remind everyone that the beauty of technology in the United States has been a combination of not just industry-leading players like these top 7, but the vast number of small and medium-sized businesses that drive innovation every day. And for those businesses, which TechNet supports greatly, resources are a challenge. So we have to make it such that these players can also have a competitive advantage. And that means taking sort of a risk-based approach where we don't focus on as much on theoretical harms, but you actually focus on actual priorities. And also policymakers taking a sort of a business industry partnership approach so that you can get the benefit as people and other companies discover innovations, you can get the benefit of that and leverage that partnership to help these small and medium-sized businesses get ahead. The last thing I will say is, resources can be challenged. It's very easy to think of all tech as big pockets. It's not the case. And so now just take an example of privacy, for example. The representative that was here before talked about sort of privacy legislation and the divergence between federal and state policy. It is really important that we have one overarching architecture that we can follow and that we're not sort of stymied by following multiple different frameworks, et cetera. That you cannot compete, you cannot focus on best of breed innovation when you're pulled in so many different directions. And so I would say these are the main things that I think we as a society, in the United States, can help our small and medium-sized businesses to innovate around AI.
Thank you. And Kent, I'm going to toss it back to you. What do you think are the greatest opportunities for AI, but also the greatest challenges? And how are companies thinking about those? And also, how should policymakers think about it?
So, we are living in an age of wonders right now. The potential for AI is just unimaginably fast. We tend to think of AI as a chatbot because that's the way it came up. That's a small percentage of the promise. As we have these scientific breakthroughs, we are seeing remarkable innovations in material science, tens of thousands of useful new materials being discovered. In healthcare, our AlphaFold project folded every protein in the human body, 200 million proteins, which each would have taken a biology PhD student a full thesis, 3 or 4 years to fold one protein. We did 200 million of them in a summer and open sourced them. It's like taking every man, woman, and child in the country, training them to be a biology PhD researcher, and having them do nothing but fold proteins for 3 or 4 years. So now we're about to see the first AI-generated drugs go into clinical trials before the end of the year. And that's just one slice. You imagine progress in nuclear fusion, in quantum combinatorial innovation, where AI makes quantum faster and quantum speeds up AI. This is a really remarkable time we're living in. So the opportunities are vast, and the importance of continuing to lead are equally important. Now, on the challenges side, again, you heard Chairman Guthrie talk about the importance of energy to power data centers. That's certainly right, both creating new kinds of energy, small modular reactors, taking advantage of wind power, geothermal, solar, natural gas, a whole variety of different opportunities. Transmission, we're hopeful that Congress will actually pass permitting reform to allow us to connect the sources of power to the uses of power across the country. The United States has a huge strategic advantage. Our power is significantly less expensive than it is in most other parts of the world. We can't lose that advantage. But then the other side, of course, is the regulatory piece. We talk about the 3 I's, the importance of innovation, infrastructure, and investment. Infrastructure I already talked about for a moment. The innovation, we need to have balanced frameworks around privacy, around copyright, around data use more generally, to make sure that America continues to be a great place to train and develop new AI tools. And then lastly, investment. We need a workforce that is continuing up the learning curve. AI is the easiest tool you've ever worked with. It's the only tool I've ever seen that will teach you how to use it. A hammer doesn't teach you how to hit a nail, but AI will tell you how to ask a better prompt. It also upskills the least skilled the most. Helps everybody, but the people who are just learning a skill get up to average much faster than they would have before. But we need to have skilling across our workforce. And of course, we have to take advantage of the remarkable skills of people around the world. America, through H-1Bs and others, has attracted a remarkably capable workforce of the best and the brightest across the world. China graduates 4 times more computer scientists than the US does every year. But the United States, in China has 1.3, 1.4 billion people. But if we play our cards right, America has 7 billion people on our side, because we have the opportunity to draw from the remarkable technical talent that we're seeing around the world. The Attention is All You Need paper. It's a paper we published that opened up this new generation of large language models. 7 of the 8 authors were born outside the United States, and the 8th was the son of immigrants to the United States. Shame on us if we don't take advantage of the opportunity of talented folks who want to come to our country and contribute to our economic growth and our economic progress.
I want to follow up on that. How important is workforce recruitment to both of your companies? And has AI had any effect on that?
Incredibly important. And I will echo what Kent says. I break it up into a couple different categories. First of all, it's the existing, getting the existing talent pool in the United States up to speed on AI. I'm going to give you an example. I have 2 kids. I have an older son who is very AI fluent. I think he was he was one of the first early adopters of ChatGPT. I think I didn't know what it was when he came home and said, Mommy, I'm using this. And I said, please don't cheat. And then I have a second son who is also very proficient. And, he says, Mom, I said, you have a Spanish test. Why don't you learn we don't speak Spanish. He has a Spanish test. I said, why don't you put the vocab words on note cards and write them out? He said, Mom, that is not how it's done anymore. I put the content into ChatGPT. It gives me quizzes. I take the test. And, I checked, and that's not cheating. That's studying. And so, I think it's having a growth mindset. I'm 47 years old, and I need to open my brain. I need to adopt AI. I need to think about new ways of doing things. And I think back to when the internet came upon us, and I think my parents had the same view. And so it's sort of having Americans today adopt new technology, not be scared to adopt new technology. And as Kent says, one of the biggest things that you hear from technology companies, and we see this every day, it's, we have so many wonderful graduates, PhDs, scientists, engineers that we educate in this country, and then we have them go home. And it is so sad. I will tell you, it's a real story that every day we'll have engineers that are junior engineers have to leave because we cannot offer them that next step to stay in this country. And it's leveraging that type of openness that can drive the innovation for us in the United States. And the last thing I would say is I also think that enabling better tax policy, which is one of the things that TechNet cares deeply about, to encourage companies to invest in local talent, invest in sort of building out your local workforces, that we would welcome that significantly. And again, there's a myriad of companies. It's not just large top 7 companies with seemingly unlimited bank accounts. It is the small and medium-sized businesses that really need this help.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Let me build on that if I could. We have programs, digital certificate programs, that are available broadly. Khan Academy is doing some remarkable work in these fronts. A lot of the times we want to partner with community colleges, existing groups that are out there. But as Parna says, the key is really making sure that there's a carrot at the end of those programs, a job offer or job opportunity. So we partnered with more than 150 companies across the United States, from big companies like Walmart to smaller companies like Smucker's Jams and Jellies, to say, if you've gotten one of these certificates, you have an opportunity to open the door to interview for a job. My most popular tweet ever was when I announced that Google would take one of these certificates in lieu of a college degree for some of our IT jobs. So there's a real appetite out there for people who want to get more up to speed on these issues. Right now, a quarter of the code we create at Google was assisted by AI. So this is really a coming trend. And we do need to change the way we work. We need to change the way we educate, as her story illustrates. there is a risk of cheating, but there's also the opportunity to have every kid in the country have their own personalized AI tutor and really change the way they interact, the way they learn, learning to use the tools, learning to challenge the tools. So it's a big opportunity, big challenge all wrapped into one.
Thank you. I'm going to switch to a different topic now. So Aparna, I want to ask you about cross-border data flows. That's really important when it comes to the ability to develop new technologies. So I wanted to ask you, how much of a concern is that for you, and how do we create a better environment for cross-border data flows?
This is such an important topic, and I think it should be an important topic for all of you, because it sounds so high level, but it actually impacts us as individuals on a day-to-day basis. And here's how. So, I'll take it one level. Generative AI models, in order to get better, they need to have access to good quality data. So they need to understand different languages. They need to be able to interpret the way someone speaks in different languages and sings in different languages, et cetera. 96% of the global population sits outside of the United States. So you can imagine that if you restricted data transfer, you need robust models to sort of generate this higher level order thinking, and you will not have the data for that if you artificially or constrictively restrict data flows. The second thing I would say is the biggest use of AI, the biggest economic gain that we can have in this country is to have our businesses build AI into workflows, to make our human beings, not eliminate human beings or not eliminate jobs, but to make us better and to make us more efficient, make us have the ability to do more. And so businesses are incorporating workflows into their processes. But if you restrict data across borders, then you can have faulty workflows or incomplete multinational corporations that can drive economic loss, if you will. And so for us, cross-border data flows are so important. And there's some aspect of being responsible about this. Of course, we have to take care of privacy concerns, take care of national security concerns, et cetera. But the vast majority of this data is benign. And so I think some of these things that different countries say that you must localize, you must keep all your data in my jurisdiction, and then you need to do X, Y, and Z, have this many data centers in that jurisdiction. Well, guess what happens? The small tech company cannot be putting data centers in every single jurisdiction. There's not enough money. The energy cost that it takes, the real estate cost that it takes, the bare metal cost that it takes. So you end up, again, impeding innovation from small and medium-sized businesses, not the big giants, but small and medium-sized businesses. And that is the lifeline of the United States for tech innovation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to switch to a different topic that you brought up earlier, Kent. You mentioned DeepSeek, and Representative Guthrie talked about that for a minute too. So how big of a concern was that for you and Google? How should we all be thinking about DeepSeek as a positive thing or a negative thing, and what it means in terms of competition with China and other adversaries, and how should policymakers think about it?
I think that the chairman was right to refer to it as a wake-up call. It's clearly the most sophisticated model we've seen coming out of China. There may have been some exaggeration around the margins in terms of the market reaction. As the story has played out, I think there may have been more nuance about how much it was trained on, what kind of chips it was using, how much it was so-called distilling answers from US models, basically asking a million questions and getting a million answers and using that to fine-tune its own model weights. But all that said, I think if we thought we had a lead of a couple of years 6 months ago, now we think we have a lead of a couple of months. They're clearly very talented and focused folks in China who have recognized this opportunity and are investing very heavily. And so as we think about the potential and what's at stake, it's important to remember that if you look at folks like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley have estimated that beyond the scientific advances I was talking about earlier, the economic sides of things that Aparna was talking earlier is potentially just as big. The estimates are as large as $22 trillion annually within the course of the next 10 years. That's larger, just to scale that's larger than the economy of the US. So if you could imagine another US economy in the world, and the benefits of that for people here and around the world, What do we need to get right from a policy perspective, from an energy perspective, from a business and product perspective to seize that opportunity?
Okay, thank you. And just a really quick lightning round here as we close out. So when you meet with policymakers tomorrow in the administration and the Congress, what's going to be your main takeaway for them?
I would say, you know, as Kent was talking about the DeepSeek phenomenon, my reaction, and I feel like it's a very American reaction, is bring it. You know, let's compete. When we have something to rally around and compete for, we bring our best. And I think my biggest ask and my biggest sort of request for policymakers is to say, make this place as easy as possible to innovate responsibly. We as players in that innovation need to come with some proposals for responsible innovation as well. We do have to care about the privacy, security, data protection, and even sort of livelihoods of our citizens. But make this place a collaborative environment that we can compete, so we can bring it back. Like, you know, let's change that months to years again. I mean, that's what makes this place so great. It's a hotbed for innovation, and we need to find those ingredients and keep them.
Yeah, that notion of a pro-innovation agenda couldn't be more important. You hear this on the right and you hear this on the left. On the right, Vice President Vance talked recently about the importance of technological leadership, working together, technology and American workers, American ingenuity. We can lead the world. On the left, you're seeing Ezra Klein, Derek Thompson's book around abundance. How do we make things work again? How do we align the interests and the efforts of government and the private sector to really get our mojo back, to really capture the energy and the capacity that we have? We know we can do this if we focus and if we get the policy side right.
I would say, Linda, I think I take it back to kids, because lots of us have them. When we teach our kids to have a growth mindset, we kind of need to do the same thing. And I think that's part of the goal of engagement here in Washington.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you both. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching. And I'm going to turn it over to the Washington Post now. Thanks.
Thank you.